All right, and we are back. Welcome back to Mittelpunkt 2020 live role-playing conference. Today we are really excited to present a discussion and a presentation that I'm really interested in learning more about. With us we have Mike Pohjola, who is a fantastic individual from Helsinki, who is going to be presenting the ancient origins of LARP. And as we know, many of the pastimes and hobbies that we have come from antiquity, and I'm very interested in finding out how LARP plays into this. So, without further ado, we present Micha and the ancient origins of LARP.
Mike.
Good afternoon, Mittelpunkt. So my name is Mike Pohjola, and I'm a long-time LARP designer and LARPer, as well as novelist and screenwriter and playwright. And I've done my master's thesis researching this topic. So this talk is an attempt to solve a 2,300-year-old mystery by using tools provided to us by LARP, as well as ancient plays, wall mosaics from the ruins of Pompeii, contemporary archaeology, anthropology, media studies, and ritual studies. The mystery is this: what was the chorus in the tragedies of ancient and classical Greece? Aristotle could not figure it out, and neither has anyone since. However, they were not LARPers. Is there a police situation? Most of contemporary Western storytelling, from Hollywood films to Russian epic novels, is based on theories built upon Aristotle's poetics. You have the audience, spectator, reader, person watching a presentation. You have the story being told. The president saves his family. A poor student wallows in guilt after committing a murder. The ancient origins of LARP, and the medium through which it is told: a movie, a book, a presentation, by the creators, the filmmakers, the author, the speaker. And this, it has long been believed, fits in perfectly with what Aristotle wrote about the tragedies of Sophocles, Euripides, and Aeschylus. You have the people on their seats in the amphitheater watching a play based on Greek mythology or history, being played by 1 to 3 actors who wear masks. And the script for all of this is written by the poet. However, there is an element in Aristotle's description of Attican tragedy that he cannot explain, and which we tend to ignore: the chorus. Aristotle was the first of many theorists who have tried and failed to explain the chorus. The chorus cannot be explained within Aristotle's framework at all, because Aristotle supposes the chorus exists for the audience. I propose that the chorus is not meant for the audience at all. By looking at the chorus as a participatory act for the people in the chorus, this part of Greek storytelling starts to make sense. Attican tragedy from 500 to 300 before current era consisted of 1 to 3 actors and a chorus of up to 50 men. The actors would wear masks, play different characters, and recite dialogue and monologues written by the poet, who was the writer, director, composer of the tragedy, producer. The members of the chorus, also called the tragic dancers, would also wear masks and play a group of some sort, such as the elders or the women. Sometimes the chorus could also have dialogue with 1 or more characters. Now, Attica, that was the area around Athens. So Attican tragedy basically means tragedies performed in Athens. Tragedies typically premiered at the religious city Dionysia festival, as part of the games. Awards were given for the group with the best play. After that, the poet, actors, props, masks, the set, and the chorus would be packed onto carts and go on tour playing their tragedies all around the ancient world. They were musicians on tour or Larpers setting up events in strange lands. Now, during the 200 years of Attican tragedy, the chorus, as well as tragedy as a whole, went through drastic changes, and analyzing anything at the end of that era might not provide great insight into how things were at the beginning of it. The function of the chorus may have ranged from a frenzied ritual to a narrator, from musical song and dance troupe to an actor. We will review some theories to gain an understanding of what scholars have said about the chorus. Now, Poetics is a transcription of Aristotle's lectures on writing tragedies, probably put together by one of his students around 335 before current era. So that's roughly 2300 years ago. These would probably have been fairly recent lectures within the last few decades. However, the tragedies Aristotle uses as his examples all premiered 70 to 164 years before the publication of the Poetics, and 22 to 115 years before he was born. So Aristotle had no first-hand experience of them at the time. Tragedy was very much a new form of art, like cinema is today. If one imagines trying to analyze the black and white silent films of Chaplin or Eisenstein based on only having seen 3D full color surround sound remakes of them, one can perhaps grasp at the difficulty Aristotle must have had making exact analysis of the plays of Aeschylus. So this is what Aristotle writes about the chorus in Poetics. The chorus too should be regarded as one of the actors. It should be an integral part of the whole and share in the action in the manner not of Euripides, but of Sophocles. Albert Weiner has discussed this chapter. Weiner points out that not all of Sophocles' choruses are dramatic either, or in any way take the plot forward, using Oedipus Rex as an example. He points out, either Aristotle is dead wrong when referring to Oedipus Rex as the model tragedy. He suggests that the chorus should be regarded as one of the actors, as is clearly the case with Aeschylus' tragedies, or our translation of the Poetics is wrong. Our tests of the dramaticness of Oedipus Rex has shown it to be a total failure. So if Aristotle did not mean that the tragic chorus should be regarded as a collective character, what did he mean? Perhaps the first clue that reinterpretation of this point is necessary is the very fact that he has said so little about the chorus. It would seem that because the chorus's lines in even the least choric tragedies comprise such a large portion of the total lines, not less than 40%, that Aristotle would have devoted at least a proportionate space to it in the Poetics. Even if Weiner was right in explaining Aristotle, this does not really help us to get to what Aristotle might have thought the chorus was, except in the sense that it was or was not a part of the story, and it should be designed with care to assist in winning the dramatic competition. But let us now look at other attempts at explaining the chorus. One of the key texts would have been a prose treatise on the chorus by Sophocles himself, but unfortunately that has been lost in time. In 19 before current era, the Roman poet Horace, so that's 300 years after Aristotle, he wrote a long poem, Ars Poetica, about writing drama. He gives much advice on style, originality, tradition, and many other things, but also on chorus. According to Horace, the chorus should play an actor's part energetically and not sing between the acts unless it advances and is also closely related to the plot. It should favor the good and give friendly advice, guide those who are angered, encourage those fearful of sinning, praise the humble table's food, sound laws and justice, and peace with her wide open gates. It should hide secrets and pray and entreat the gods, that the proud lose their luck and the wretched regain it. A very moral stand. Horace wrote in a time of revival of classic Greek tragedy in Rome, centuries after even Aristotle, and after centuries of Roman remakes and adaptations of Greek plays where the chorus was removed. But in Horace's time, the chorus was brought back. However, where Aristotle wrote about the chorus is in ambiguity. Horace is dead sure that the function of the chorus is to sing songs, make commentary on the plot, and help the audience pass judgment on the characters. So the function of the chorus by Horace's time, at least according to him, was 100% related to what the audience, the way the audience saw it. Like Aristotle, Horace also frowns upon extra stage numbers, where the chorus is used during interludes for singing songs unrelated to the plot. However, these may well have served a function for the chorus, if not for the audience. It seems that during Horace's time, the chorus was less like the chorus of Greek tragedy and more like a song and dance group of contemporary musical theater. And now you're going to hear some German thinkers. Back when Germany was German was a language of great thinkers. August Wilhelm von Slegel, I just spit a little, sorry, was a German romanticist poet and philosopher who wrote about his views on the chorus. Whatever the chorus might be and do in its particular piece, it represented in general first the common mind of the nation and then the general sympathy of all mankind. In a word, the chorus is the ideal spectator. It mitigates the impression of a heart-rending or moving story, while it conveys to the actual spectator a lyrical and musical expression of his own emotions and elevates him to the region of contemplation. Von Slegel chose a perspective opposite to that of Horace, while staying within the performer-audience paradigm. To him, the chorus is not an actor, but is the ideal spectator, a representative of the audience on stage. Another German person replied to Schlegel. Before becoming a well-known nihilist philosopher, Friedrich Nietzsche was a philologist who wrote about Greek theater. He refutes Schlegel's concept. This view, combined with the historical tradition that originally the tragedy consisted entirely of the chorus, reveals itself for what it is, crude and unscholarly, although dazzling claim. For we had always thought that the proper spectator, whoever he might be, must always remain conscious that he has a work of art in front of him, not an empirical reality. Whereas the tragic chorus of the Greeks is required to recognize the shapes on the stage as living, existing people. So the chorus of Oceanids really believe that they see Titan Prometheus in front of them and consider themselves every bit as real as the god on the scene. And was that supposed to be the highest and purest type of spectator, a person who, like the Oceanids, considers Prometheus vitally alive and real? Would it be a mark of the ideal spectator to run up onto the stage and free the god from his torment? I find it interesting that in refuting von Slegel, Nietzsche comes so close to my own understanding, yet fails to take the final step. Yes, the chorus, like the actors, does pretend to believe everything on stage is true. Yes, they are part of the action and the world presented on stage. Yes, for them it is, in a way, real. From the perspective of the audience, the chorus serves no point. But for the tragic dancers of the chorus, the experience is incredibly powerful. Nietzsche again. What sort of artistic style would there be which one might derive from the idea of the spectator, or which one might consider the spectator in himself the essential form? The spectator without a play is a contradictory idea. What sort of artistic style indeed? One based on participation, not observation. Perhaps participation was out of vogue in Nietzsche's time, but it is very much alive now. One thing we do know about Greek tragedy with some certainty is that it arose out of rituals. This is agreed upon by historians, is evident in many plays, is showed in surviving ancient visual art, is proven by archaeology, and is also mentioned by Aristotle. Aristotle says in Poetics, tragedy, as also comedy, was at first mere improvisation. The one originated with the authors of the dithyramb, hymns sung and danced in honor of Dionysus, the other with those of the phallic songs which are still in use in many of our cities. So if tragedy sprung from ritual, what were those rituals like? According to performance scholar Richard Schechner, one cannot always tell performance and ritual apart, and in prehistoric times they may have well been one and the same. Evidence indicates that people were performing in caves at least 40,000 years ago. What kinds of performances? The words dance, theater, and music, or their linguistic equivalents, are not universal, but the behaviors are. Of course, such behaviors vary from place to place, culture to culture, and epoch to epoch. But surviving cave art and prehistoric artifacts indicate that rhythmic movement, dancing, beating of bone-to-bone drums and flute sounds, music, wearing masks and or costumes while impersonating other humans, animals, or supernaturals, theater, was going on. No one knows if these Paleolithic performers were acting out stories representing past events, experiences, memories, dreams, or fantasies. Schechner's point that all performances are indeed to some degree both ritual and entertainment is useful for one following the development of Attican tragedy, as I shall later show. There is a historical genre directly between ritual and drama, appropriately called ritual drama. Understanding it is key to understanding the origins of Attican tragedy. So this is 2,000 years, starts 2,000 years before Attican tragedy and ends just when Attican tragedy starts. Perhaps the best and certainly the oldest surviving description of ritual drama is from Egypt. The so-called Abydos Passion Play was contemporary to Dionysian dithyrambs, which gave birth to Attican tragedy, and also in the same cultural sphere, making the exchange of ideas and practices possible. Ikernofret, the chief treasurer of Pharaoh Senusret III, participated in this event around 1800 before current era, almost 4,000 years ago. He wanted to tell us about his character. He wanted to tell us about his character so much that he had it carved on stone with hieroglyphics. And I will translate. I acted as beloved son of Osiris Khentiamentu. I embellished his great bark of eternity. I made for it a shrine which displays the beauties of Khentiamentu in gold, silver, lapis lazuli, bronze, sesnegem wood, and cedar. I fashioned the gods in his train. I made their shrines anew. I caused the temple priesthood to do their duties. I caused them to know the custom of every day, the festival of the head of the year. I organized the going forth of Wepwawet when he proceeded to avenge his father. I drove away the rebels from the Neshmet bark. I overthrew the enemies of Osiris. I celebrated the great going forth. I followed the god at his going and caused the ship to sail, Thoth steering and the sailing. I avenged Wennefer that day of the great fight. I overthrew all his enemies upon the sandbanks of Nedit. I caused him to proceed into the great bark. It raised up his beauties. I making glad the people of the eastern desert, creating joy amongst the people of the western desert. They saw the beauties of the Neshmet bark when it touched land at Abydos. when it brought Osiris Kentimentu to his palace. I followed the god to his house. I carried out his purification and extended his seat, and solved the problems of his residence amongst his entourage. The Abydos Passion Play was a part of the cult of Osiris, which has many similarities with the cult of Dionysus, to such an extent that the two gods are sometimes considered the same. Both gods were part human, part god. They were crucified. They had a virgin birth. They died and were resurrected. These characteristics obviously also fit with the figure of Jesus Christ, whose worship would emerge many centuries later. One of the key surviving descriptions of the Abydos Passion Play comes from Greek historian Herodotus, a contemporary of Sophocles and Euripides. The few then who have been left about the image draw a wain with 4 wheels, which bears the shrine and the image that is within the shrine, and the other priests standing in the gateway try to prevent it from entering, and the men who are under a vow come to the assistance of the god and strike them, while the others defend themselves. Then there comes to be a hard fight with staves, and they break one another's heads, and I am of opinion that many even die of the wounds they receive. The Egyptians, however, told me that no one died. Swedish Larp designer Martin Eriksson has written about the Abydos Passion Play in comparison with Larp. According to him, in 2004, the pharaoh did pretty much the kind of job a megalomaniac Larp designer, Larp organizer would do with a few thousand slaves and unlimited resources, instead of a guy with a van and a loan from the local role-playing guild. He continues, we have no real way of knowing exactly how pre-scripted these ritual plays were. Our scant sources hint that they were set with a scripted core cast at the center of a violently ecstatic crowd. Eriksson arrives very close to what I believe the early Attican tragedies were, a scripted core cast of 1 to 3 actors at the center of a violently ecstatic chorus. It is not unthinkable that the early tragic dancers in worship of Dionysus would have been poor man's versions of these grand celebrations of Osiris. Nevertheless, this type of ritual drama would certainly have been familiar to the Greeks. If dithyrambs arose out of rituals or ritual dramas, then how did they differ from other rituals or ritual dramas? What in fact were dithyrambs? We know they were connected to at least the cult of Dionysus and likely to other cults as well. The Romans called Dionysus Bacchus, and celebrations of the god Bacchanalia. This word is still used to describe crazy parties similar to the ones that were thrown by the Dionysus followers of old, consisting of sex and wine and loud music such as dithyrambs. Attendees were typically dressed in purple robes or skins of goats, foxes, fawns, or leopards, wearing crowns of laurels on their heads. Masks were used to summon different persona. Ritual objects carried also included staves, scourges, bowls, and drinking cups. Nevertheless, these were not only festivals of the body, far from it. Wine and sex also served as means for getting closer to God, as in the Nine Inch Nails song. If one compares these religious festivals to contemporary rock festivals, an attendant might enjoy sex and intoxicants at both, but at Dionysiac rituals, there would also be a more spiritual element, becoming one with your god, seeing your favorite artists, experiencing symbolic death and rebirth, singing along to the well-known songs among hundreds of other celebrants, having an epiphany. A major part of Dionysiac rituals were the dithyrambs. They were ecstatic narrative songs with a special rhythm, danced to by a large group of celebrants called a chorus, or a tragic dance, which means goat dance. The chorus consisted of 50 men or boys dancing in a circle, sometimes dressed as satyrs or wearing the masks of satyrs. Typically, each dithyramb had a story related to the life, death, or rebirth of Dionysus or some other hero or god. Typically, they were accompanied by a flute known as the aulos. In the mosaic here from Pompeii, you can see a person playing an olos, like a double flute. It's not impossible to think that sometimes trumpets, drums, bull rollers, and cymbals were also used to accompany the dithyramb to make the dancing even wilder. There is no indication that this was a performative dance like the ballet, as an audience is never mentioned. Since it was a religious ritual, it was quite probably more of an experiential dance, such as bashing your head at the mosh pit of a heavy metal concert, or raving into a trance at a techno party, or waltzing with your loved one at a seaside restaurant. The key difference between singing and dancing to dithyrambs and Attican tragedy is that one is more of a private ritual and the other more of a public spectacle. That is to say, tragedy had an audience. As Richard Schechner pointed out, there is no clear division between ritual and performance. Similarly, there is no clear division between being in a member of the ritual audience or being a ritual participant. And yet they are different. Nevertheless, we know that at least the initiation rituals of Dionysus worship happened in secret. So clearly not all of it was meant for an audience to observe, but for the initiates to participate in. There were also Dionysian rituals that were meant for the public, such as a procession through the polis streets carrying phaloi, actual or representative goat penises. We also know that by Attican tragedy was performed at amphitheaters, so clearly it had at least many components that were meant for an audience to observe. Possibly in the beginning, tragedies had more participatory elements and later on evolved into being more performances and less rituals, also meaning more friendly for a passive audience and involving less participation. Greek legends tell of the musician Arion, who invented dithyramb as a literary composition for chorus around 600 before current era. Having pre-written songs opened up the possibility of giving repeat performances of a similar nature and created a new role, the poet. In this case, the poet would write the lyrics and the music, conduct and direct the chorus, be their producer and manager, and play the olos or the lyre. Soon after this, big religious festivals really became a thing in Greece. They had already had the Olympic Games every 4th year, but around the year 580, before current era, they were complemented by 3 other such events, making games an annual thing. Games included athletic competitions, but also ritual dramas comparable to those at Abydos, giant banquets, and cultural competitions such as singing hymns, playing instruments, painting, and eventually singing dithyrambs. Comparison with the annual Mittelpunkt Larp conference, also rotating between 4 different places, are tempting, or perhaps also this Mittelpunkt. Dithyramb competitions were introduced into the Athens Games sometime between 560 and 530 before current era. At the dithyramb competition, each tribe would enter 2 groups of dancers, choruses, one of men and one of boys. Each chorus would be led by a choruphaios, serving a role similar to Arion above. The choruses would dance and sing in ecstasy and be observed by an audience and a jury. The winner would receive a goat as a prize. How intoxicated or enthusiastic the chorus or their leader or the audience was, we don't know. But this was a period of rapid cultural evolution, and the jury might naturally reward external performance over participatory immersion, since they could only observe the former. Having a tragic chorus dance in front of an audience is not a theater play. It is similar to putting Larp on stage and hoping people get it. But 100 years later, it had evolved into theater. These Larp photos, by the way, are from Koikoi in Norway, taken by Li Xin. According to legend, a poet named Thespis introduced an actor with a prologue and pre-written monologues and gave the actor several masks so he could play several characters. From a LARP perspective, this would be similar to having the game master put on a funny hat and play supporting characters to take the action forward. From a theater perspective, this would be similar to finally having an actor that also speaks to the audience. From Thespis' name, we get the synonym for actor, thespian. Aeschylus, the next big innovator, first competed with his tragedies in 499 before current era. He was active for almost 50 years and made many great inventions, which Aristotle describes thus. Aeschylus first introduced a second actor. He diminished the importance of the chorus and assigned the leading part to the dialogue. Now, what does this mean for the chorus? According to Aristotle, their importance was diminished, but the Poetics was written over 100 years after these events. So it is possible Aristotle did not fully capture the meaning of the second actor for the chorus. Certainly they would have had less to do if they stand around while Dionysus and the king of Thebes are having a long conversation. No dancing or singing is necessary or even welcome. From the perspective of the audience, the chorus might sometimes seem even superfluous, like watching a Disney movie. Why is the story constantly interrupted by singing? But from the point of view of the chorus, things can seem quite different. They are still participating in a festival in honor of the god Dionysus. They have a distinct role in the story and have a presence in most of the scenes, even if they don't actively do anything. They do, however, play characters that are at the center of the action, perhaps interacting with each other in a subdued way, commenting on the action of the main characters, and definitely experiencing it all as if they were there. They were. For them, the king of Thebes is not Aeschylus wearing a mask he made last night. He is the king of Thebes. The final innovation described in Poetics came from the poet Sophocles, who started about 30 years after Aeschylus and still over 100 years before Aristotle. Aristotle says Sophocles raised the number of actors to 3 and added scene painting. According to Aristotle, Sophocles' Oedipus Rex was the highest achievement in tragedy, and it is indeed still performed today. Some 20 years after that, the highest achievement, the golden age of tragedy and of Athens, came to an end. Sophocles and Euripides both died around 406, Aeschylus having passed away 50 years earlier. The gradual decline of the chorus was in progress, and soon the chorus would disappear altogether from contemporary tragedies. And after this, Aristotle wrote Poetics. And thus, over 2,000 years ago, participation mutated into performance and spectatorship. Now, let us return to Nietzsche's question from the beginning. What sort of artistic style would there be which one might derive from the idea of the spectator, for which one might consider the spectator in himself the essential form? I suggested any participatory art might fulfill that demand. Nietzsche would perhaps not have been satisfied with this answer, since for him the spectator without a play is a contradictory idea. But a participant in a LARP could easily be considered a spectator without a play, and the whole medium of LARP and artistic style derived from the idea of the spectator in himself. Indeed, the term first-person audience has become commonplace in describing the feeling of being immersed in the story and the character, and seeing everything as if you were really there. Because you are. Grotowski used these words to describe his attempts at participatory theater. In the ritual, the montage takes place in the minds of the doers. That's another way of saying first-person audience. Similarly, perhaps a tragic dancer in a chorus could be a first-person audience for the events of the tragedy. If all performances are indeed to some degree both ritual and entertainment, and all experiences are to some degree both passive and participatory, it is impossible to find a specific point in time when ritual dithyrambs for participants turned into artistic tragedies for spectators. Even trying to find such a point becomes meaningless. We do not know at which point tragedy became a spectator's sport. But since Thespis added an actor and a prologue in the latter half of the 6th century, before current era, it is clear that the tragic dances were already performed for the audience at that point. My proposition is that around 500 BCE, the experience for the people in the chorus, the tragic dancers, was that of a participatory ritual, and the experience for the people in the seats of amphitheater was that of a passive audience observing a combination between ritual and entertainment. But in 335, when Poetics was published, the experience for the people in the chorus was closer to that of actors performing in a play. And the experience for the audience was very similar to passive audiences of theater and film entertainment today. This would mean that at some point during those 200 years, there was a shift in tradition. So based on over 2 decades of work in the field of participatory art, it is not fruitful to observe participation from the outside. It is not meant to look interesting. It is meant to feel interesting. Therefore, to understand rituals, a participatory experience, we must ask what it feels like to take part in one. Richard Schechner, play gives people a chance to temporarily experience the taboo, the excessive, and the risky. You may never be Oedipus or Cleopatra, but you can perform them in play. Ritual and play lead people into a second reality separate from ordinary life. This reality is one where people can become selves other than their daily selves. Schechner's friend, anthropologist Victor Turner, also wrote a lot about rituals based on extensive field work among tribal societies. He says rituals are characterized by liberation of human capacities of cognition, affect, volition, creativity from the normative constraints. Individuals participating in a ritual are no longer bound by their everyday identities, their social statuses, their families, their sex, their age, their caste, or their class. They absorb a new liminal identity for the duration of the ritual and relate to each other through that identity. The new role can be celebrant, man, woman, god, bull, ancestor, or anything else. But the other participants have a similar role and only see each other through that role. Turner defines this experience as an unmediated relationship between historical, idiosyncratic, concrete individuals. As one of the most developed contemporary participatory art forms, the practice of Larps shows what participation and liminoid experiences can feel like. But they also provide another useful perspective on rituals. Larps allow the participants to experience personalities, lives, cultures, and events from dozens of perspectives, and even participate in rituals while pretending to believe they are true. Experimenting with and experiencing different sorts of rituals provides one with some tools for understanding actual rituals as well. So the chorus solves many functions. The function may have been different for the tragic dancers in the chorus, for the audience, for the poet, for the actors, and for the jury of a dramatic competition. It clearly changed over time from a participatory ritual to a performance meant for the audience. And Aristotle may have been instrumental in hastening this transformation. Nevertheless, even today, performance and especially performing shares attributes with ritual. Only analyzing chorus from the perspective of the audience or the jury, as Aristotle does, automatically leaves out a major part of the importance of the chorus. The chorus had aspects of first-person audience and participation, which are shared more by ritual than by theater. Today, those aspects live on in participatory media, including transmedia, LARPs, improvisation, multiplayer digital games, and dance battles. To better understand and develop these recent and emerging media, it is useful to look at what has been done before. Similarly, the practice of these contemporary ritual dramas provides unique insight to the chorus 2,500 years ago, such that was not available to earlier researchers. The chorus lives on, and the roots of LARP go beyond history. Thank you.
That was awesome.
All right, Emma, are we back? Mm-hmm. All right. Mika, this is probably one of the coolest presentations I've ever seen about LARP and its relationship to a lot of the things that we consider so modern in our world, and the way that really so many of the assumptions that we have about the hobby that we take place in really find their roots in what is effectively the human condition. You mentioned at certain points throughout the presentation the importance of tribal cultures and indigenous cultures using ritual as a means of communicating both history, tragedy, and potentially the future. Could you share with us how much time does it take for you to crunch all of this to be able to understand, I mean, really defining these things from past, present, and future into a presentation like this? What kind of time did this take?
I didn't only do it for you guys.
Of course.
It's my based on my master's thesis, and for that I did a lot of work building upon people like LARP theorists and LARP discussions that we've had internationally for, by then, I guess, like 15 years.
Wow.
The major insight was Martin Eriksson's article in 2004, Play to Love, in which he talks about these Egyptian ritual dramas and the chance to experience improvised rituals that are very big in the Norwegian LARP scene for some reason, not at all in my own. And then reading about history and ritual studies and so on. So I guess it's apart from this background of LARP theory and going through LARPs and rituals and so on, it's like the same amount of work as any master's thesis.
Yeah, wow.
So a lot, not impossible.
That is amazing. I seriously, I cannot wait to share this with so many people in my life.
For me, it was awesome. So you have so many similarities, you know. So as I understood it, it started basically as a LARP on stage, and then it developed into something like a Rocky Horror Picture Show screening, you know. and then this aspect about party as a worship, like Rabbi Nachman techno parties come to mind, you know. It's like this. There's no new thing under the earth.
No new thing under the sun. Yeah,
under the sun.
The also the connection to festival, metal festivals, and kind of the way that I also look at, for instance, large LARP festivals, like for instance Conquest de Melodia, which we're involved in. Like, this is to me one of the coolest
things. It's also highly ritualized. Everything is highly ritualized, you know. It's people go there with the plan of doing something totally new, but kind of it's ritualized, you know.
It's so awesome.
That was really eye-opening. It was really great.
I'm going to be talking about this for a while, and I'm going to be sharing this to a ton of people, so I cannot thank you enough. Mika, thank you so much for being here and for presenting this, and I know that this will spark thousands of discussions in the LARP community that I think will open up a lot of minds into understanding where LARP and humanity kind of come together in this way, that LARP is something that seems almost integral to the human condition.
Thank you for listening, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. So we have the next program coming up today is with Alphabite,
Yeah.
who will be joining us here in 15 minutes. So we hope that you will stay with us and join us for the next part of Mittelpunkt 2020 live LARP conference. So we'll see you in 15 minutes with Alphabite.
Bye-bye. See you in 50 minutes.